I hope everybody has the book, has read the book, and you are here. Listen, we're not going to waste any time. We're going to get right to it. Because we got to get right to it because the book was so thick that we had to get, we don't have a choice in this thing. We just got to get right to the business. And those of you all who read the book, you know what the book is. So we're probably only going to get through about half of the book today, right? So, and the other half we'll probably get to tomorrow. So don't forget, if you want to, we'll get to the other half tomorrow. So please don't forget, because we have to get to the conclusion. And those who don't see it tonight, if they read the book later, it'll always be available up here for the discussion that we're having. And let's get to it. Let me go to my main thing about the book before I go to the different sections of the first half of the book. My main thing about the book is that this book, I'm going to give you the conclusion first. Hit that like button too while you're there. You know what to do. Hit that like button. Hit that bell. Do all the stuff we normally do. Listen, the main part of this book is a condemnation of American wealth. You built American wealth on people who were not free. Now let's get into it. We're going to start off where we start off at the beginning. Try to get through about half of this. Before we do that, let's just go to the introduction. Let's just go to the introduction. I think that's page 10 or 11. Those of you who did the audio book, try to follow along as best you can. Right? So let's go to page, that's the introduction. The Roman numerals. Right? Now I want you to go to page 11 and go to on the introduction. And this just kind of sums up everything. Go to that second paragraph, those of you who have the actual book. Those of you who didn't, you remember it. It says, if slavery was outside of U.S. history, for instance, if indeed it was a drag and not a rocket booster to American economic growth, then slavery was not implicated in U.S. growth, success, power, wealth. Therefore, none of the massive quantities of wealth and treasure piled by that economic growth is owed to African Americans. Oh, what is he saying? He said they ran a game on us. They said, hey, no. You didn't build a country. You didn't build a country. You didn't really contribute to the growth. They always wanted us to avoid that implication. They always want us to avoid the implication that we did this. We was here for most of y'all and we did this. That's the underlying thing. Now, let's go to page 12. Go to page 12. It was an interesting way he broke up the chapters, back, feet, all this kind of stuff. What was it? Breath. That was interesting. But go to page 12. One of the things that you see too, that we did, they were her property, right? You see the whole theme come up here again. Go to that first full paragraph on page 12. Breckinridge had no such doubts. He once advised a female relative, your land and Negroes let no person on earth persuade you to give up. Your land and your Negroes. A female relative. Same thing we heard in the Have Has Never Been Told. You all are complicit. That was on page 12. You are complicit. Ain't no more. Well, we was women and we had a hard time. Listen, if you own slaves, you had slaves, you complicit. So you have one, the condemnation of American wealth, then this kind of condemnation or this condemnation of an idea that it wasn't whiteness at that time. Right now we're oppressed not just by whiteness, but people of colorness too, right? Because we're not discriminated against just by white people. But in that time, you were saying it was just the white men, and that was a game. That was wrong. Now let's go. Let's go now to page 27. What you see in page 27 that people don't like to talk about is how the slaves, even at that time, and I don't call them enslaved people because I believe they were dehumanized to such an extent that calling them enslaved people doesn't really go to the heart of what white slave owners did to them. I don't call them enslavers. That sounds kind of nice. They were enslavers. No, 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 no. Slave owners. You own people. Let's talk about what that means. So you go to page 27, that second full paragraph that begins with sometimes. And you go down and you see how slaves understood what was happening and how what was happening was a contradiction even then for what this country stood for. We've always understood that America was a lie, right? So you go here and it says sometimes both Georgia men and enslaved, this is the second full paragraph, sometimes both Georgia men and enslaved intentionally irritated that particular sting. A few years after Ball was herded south, a slave trader marched a coffle past the U.S. Capitol as a gaggle of congressmen took a cigar break in front of the steps. One of the captive men raised his monocles and mockingly sang "Hail Columbia," a popular song. Another such occasion relied for its emotional punch, not on the sarcasm of captives, but on the brandishes of captors. Jesse Torrey, a Philadelphia physician, was visiting the Capitol when he saw a coffle pass by in chains. A passerby explained that the white drivers of the caravan were Georgie men. The doctor walked up to one and inquired, in what must have been an accusatory tone, have you not enough such people in that country yet? Not quite yet, he said with a sneer. Yeah, it wasn't going to be quite yet. Y'all was just going to do that forever. But we knew. That's why we sang out in song. We always knew it was a contradiction. You were just contradicting yourselves. We got to get to the part where they just called it what it was. We were stole. In terms of kidnap. Ooh, we got to get to that. Let's get to this other stuff first, fam. Let me go to the next one. Let's go to page 41. 41. 41. Last paragraph on page 41, the last paragraph. As of 1807, 4 out of every 5 people who came from the old world to the new world came from Africa. Not Europe, chained in the belly of a ship, not free on its deck. Huddled masses, you know what that term comes from. They talk about huddled masses in terms of immigration. Huddled masses in steerage class, yearning to breathe free of the famine and poverty of Ireland, Italy, or the shadows that came later. 10 million middle passages of African captives had shaped the new world and its interactions with the old. So when you talk about your huddled masses, it's funny how nobody talks about us. We were the first huddled masses, and we came over here and more wretched. The people, our descendants who came over here and got mixed, because if you see what you see in this book, that's why I say we're descendants of slave and slave master. You see all the rape we saw in this book? Gang rape, everything else. You see all that? That's why I say you can't just trace it back and say it's just that. But how come nobody talks about us with this kind of respect? We brought you here and you endured this, and we're going to be respectful. How come that never happens for us? Who is the, it's kind of like what I talk about. It's kind of like what I talk about when I talk about the dream. Like, people call themselves dreamers, and we're the original dreamers. Martin Luther King, civil rights. I have a dream speech. We're the dreamers. It's kind of like who has more huddled masses than us on the bottom of a slave ship? How you just gonna take everything? Even the Statue of Liberty, y'all remember us talking about that? Y'all remember us talking about how that was meant for us, and they took it and gave it to immigrants. That's not right. The person who gave that statue here meant for us to have that as a symbol of pride, and y'all took it away the same way y'all took away the huddled masses stuff. No. We came first as huddled masses. You don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. But we just let them do whatever. Let's go to page 44, because there's something I really didn't know in terms of Haiti. And this goes to show everything in the world is like dominoes. So if you go to page 44, you see in 1791, Africans in the French Caribbean colony of Saint Domingue, which is now Haiti, exploded in a revolt unprecedented in human history. Saint Domingue, the western third of the island of Hispaniola, was at that time the ultimate sugar island, the imperial engine of French economic growth. Now let's go to page. 44. Let's go to page 48. Hold that. And we're going to go to 48 and then 49. Let's go to 48. Now go to that second full paragraph. That second full paragraph that begins with in any. Go to that paragraph. In any case, the Haitian Revolution had already made it possible for the United States to open up the Mississippi Valley to the young nation's internal slave trade. Now, understand something. Haitians were absolutely right to kick Napoleon and them out of there. But nobody knows what unintended consequences look like. Nobody knows that. So you got rid of your oppressor, and Haiti needs to be celebrated because of that. They did that. How many countries did that and did it that early? They got you out of there. They routed you. That's wonderful. And it was good for America in general, but it was bad for us. It was bad for the slaves because then they allowed them to open up the territory. Think about what that connection looks like. You have no idea. See, we don't never have no idea of what sort of unintended consequences are going to come from a thing. So let me go to. Yep. It says in that same paragraph, it says American acquisition depended on the sacrifices of hundreds of thousands of African American men, women, children who in Saint Domingue rose up against the one social institution whose protection appeared to be written in the U.S. Constitution, the enslavement of African people. Ooh-wee. Now let's go to page 62. Mm-mm. 62. You know, page 62 brings me to, these stories are horrible. And I don't know why nobody has really spoken about this in terms of what it is, in terms of this is just torture. These are just torture camps. We're going to get to the whips, hopefully, but I don't want to deal too much of it. And y'all can talk about it when y'all call in because that is traumatic. But at page 62, the second full paragraph. Page 62, the second full paragraph. On the 12th, Parrott and his men returned to the Andre house from one such expedition, carrying the heads of rebels Pierre Griff and Hans Wimpren. Andre showed Parrott and his troops, who included several free men of color, his own trophies. Deslandes had his hands, skip down a little bit, had his hands chopped off with an axe. Even the people, go to the next page, on page 63, even the snitches got murdered. The snitches thought they was getting away, they got murdered too. Go to the second full paragraph on 63. On the morning of the 15th, the judges pronounced the sentences. 20 would die. Even Cupidon and Lewis did not save themselves. They too were to be executed just like the silent ones. Death was to come by firing squad. Each convicted rebel was to be taken to his respective home plantation to be executed in front of all the gathered slaves. In front of all the gathered slaves, they took you to be executed. Let me slow down. I don't want to get too emotional. They took them to be executed in front of people that they knew and loved. They didn't just execute them somewhere else where you know that your family's gone, your family member's dead. They took them to be executed in front of people that they knew they loved. If that ain't torture for freedom, because they were trying to get free. If that's not torture, I don't know what is. Let me finish this little part. To be executed in front of the gathered slaves. Over the next day or so, the militia carried out the sentences, shooting the condemned and decapitating their corpses while silent crowds watched. Silent crowds watched. You be silent too. I mean, come on. I mean, how much? Well, it gets worse when they put, what's the slave owner who put the hot rod down the slave's throat? It gets much worse. I say, how much worse can it get? It gets a lot worse. So let's go to page 64. Because if you don't understand anything else, you got to understand the sellouts in any group. It's always going to be a good number of sellouts who sell out for $1, right? I'm going to get an extra $1. Y'all don't need this $1. So anyway, let's go to 64. Go to the second paragraph on 64. By reputation, slaveholders were stubborn traditionalists who forgot nothing and learned nothing. In reality, they continued to learn and adapt and promote their own interests. But after the 1811 revolt, they increased their regulation and surveillance of the slave population, taking them to new heights. Local militia trained more intensely. Patrols swept slave quarters with new regularity. Claiborne, anxious as ever, now put the area on alert whenever he heard a rumor of revolt, like the one that came to his ears before Christmas in 1811. Louisiana's state government rewarded informers with freedom. Free people of color in the United States were always a teeny minority who sided with white majority during crisis. In contrast to Saint Domingue, where many had joined the rebellion. Ooh, we got a sellout problem. We still do. We still got a sellout problem, don't we? Seems to me like we do. I'm gonna get my freedom. I'm free. I can't let them get loose. I gotta tell somebody what's going on. I gotta go over there to Mr. Charlie. Mr. Charlie, I gotta go tell him what it is. I hope you bust hell wide open. You deserve it. I don't care whether you are one of them in 2021. A lot of y'all are really doing that, are really showing your colors this year. Your COINTELPRO colors, you're really showing them. You go give stuff to the man. We've had this problem for a long time. We have a lot of sellouts. I don't think sellouts, really face enough condemnation. None of that. They just gonna be like, "Why? I have a different opinion. That's why I sold out. I just got a different opinion than you." No, you don't. You sold out for the bag or whatever. It ain't about no different opinion. You sold out for the reason that you sold out. So let's go to page 68. Ooh. Yeah, but this is when Andrew Jackson, right around this time, Andrew Jackson comes into play. So let's go to page 68. He's running all the Indians off, making way for slave expansions, for people who are going to build a whole economy on us, on our backs. Ooh-wee. So that's what we are. So you go to page 68, go to the first full paragraph towards the bottom. Only a few whites escaped, though the Creeks, the most powerful whom owned African-American descended slaves and cotton plantations, kept black prisoners alive. Now, when they talk about the Creeks, they're talking about Native Americans. Listen, if you own slaves, you don't get to have the high ground. You don't get to have the moral high ground. I don't care whether you Creek, Choctaw, whatever you are. You don't get to have the moral high ground anymore if you own slaves. You don't get to say we just like the slaves if you own some slaves. You don't get to say we just like the Negroes if you own Negroes. You don't. I don't care whether you white women. I don't care whether you Native Americans. We are not the same. You see what happened right here? This is a travesty. Page 71, family. We're going to move through this thing. Now, go to the bottom of page 71. Go to the third full paragraph at the end of the third full paragraph on page 71. On January 25th, the invaders departed, taking with them almost 800 enslaved people who had been, in effect, emancipated themselves. So some enslaved people went to Britain. Ain't that something? Interesting. But go to the next paragraph. Although mighty armies disrupted slaveholder power more effectively than the slaves' revolt had, enslavers had won this round too. The loss of 800, for whom Britain would, after many years, consent to reimburse Louisiana enslavers. This is another instance of slave owners, not just slave owners being paid reparations, really, for what they lost, and we still haven't gotten anything. Where they do that at? So wait. Oh, somebody said Chickasaw. So wait, I consider myself correct. So wait. We talked about the DC, but this is not the first time that y'all done paid people for, okay, we're gonna pay you Britain done paid them for the slaves. America paid people, but what about the slaves and their descendants? What happens to them? Let's go to page 77. We're in right hand now. 77 starts to get to the crux of what we're talking about. And the crux of what we're talking about is economic growth. Because when we talk about we built America, we're talking specifically about economic growth. The foundation of America. How did America become this booming economy? How did we get here? We're talking about economic growth. And that is what we start to talk about that. So go to page 77, go to the last paragraph on page 77, and we're going to read through it. Cotton cloth was why New Orleans was booming. And let me just say this before I go into that. New Orleans had a lot of cultural stuff going on that I'm not going to get into, but good grief. The men living with the mulatto women, the white men, until they decided to find a white woman, and then the white women being upset about it. They had a lot of stuff going on. Maybe they still do. I don't know. Anyway, last paragraph. Cotton cloth was why New Orleans was booming. While the world was changing, white entrepreneurs here, like the customers in the shops, Rachel was passing the men on the corners, the sellers and the buyers on the ships along the levee were participating in, even driving the worldwide historical change. Worldwide historical change. Building on the government-sponsored process of migration and market making taking place in Georgia and the battles fought by the slaveholders military to open up the Mississippi Valley after 1815, a new set of entrepreneurs had begun to use Rachel and all the others brought here against their wills to create an unprecedented boom. Not just a boom, an unprecedented boom. When we say unprecedented boom, we're talking about an unprecedented amount of wealth that was made. Y'all remember the part where the dude was having breakfast? He was having breakfast and he came outside and his slave owner didn't even tell him he was finna have him kidnapped and sent off because they were selling him down to Georgia. And he said, go finish my food. Imagine that. You got to eat somebody else's leftover. Oh, nasty man. You got to eat his stuff. Go finish my food. And then somebody comes back and just grabs him by the neck and throws him in somewhere. No wife, no family, no nothing no more. The worst thing about this, though, is that America broke up black families. And then a few generations later said, oh my God, why don't you all believe in family? You broke up our families. We always believe. You broke them up. You broke up all the families. And then you come and say, oh my God, they have a cultural problem because they don't believe in family values. Does anybody understand how sick this is? Does everybody understand how sick this is? This is the sickest thing I've ever seen. It is. Oh. What page are we on? 77? Okay, let's go, fam. Let's go to page 87. Let's talk again about what was built in this country by slaves. 87. Let me go through here. Let's go to, on page 87, let's go to the second paragraph towards the bottom. The second full paragraph towards the bottom. And as with cotton, Ancestral, these creators Creative destroyers established access to supply, stimulated demand, and created a place where a purchaser could always count on finding what he wanted. In other words, they made a market, one that, though centered in the lower Mississippi Valley, stretched far beyond this specific place to create tendrils of incentive reaching into Maryland farms, Alabama cotton docks, New York banks, and London parlors. This slave market would continue to develop over the next 4 decades in dynamic relationship with the development of the cotton economy. They made a whole market off of slave labor, a whole market. And you know who didn't get anything from that market? We didn't. Our ancestors didn't get anything. We, as the descendants, haven't gotten anything. But it built America. It built corporations. It built people. It built families. It just didn't build the people who built it. Let's go to page 90 real quick, fam. Because we have to talk about all the mechanisms. At that time, it was white supremacy. Right now, I think it's probably something more complex than that, but we'll get into that, right? Let's go to the bottom of page 90. Much of the muscular power in right hands was nerved by credit itself, a phenomenon almost magical seeming, as the idea that one could direct far off events with one's hands. Credit is a belief. Credit is a belief. Credit is a belief. The word comes from the Latin credere, that brings value today in exchange for a promise to pay tomorrow. Credit allowed entrepreneurs and others to spend tomorrow's money today, accomplishing trades and investments that would, the borrower believed, make more wealth tomorrow. When granted on easy terms, credit was what allowed trade to spread, to move smoothly, and to enrich people around the Atlantic basin. Yeah. So understand credit. Well, you ain't gotta have the money. We just gotta believe. Mind you, we were slaves. We weren't even able to participate in that. See, that's the thing. When you allow us, we were the currency. We didn't participate. We gave of our labor, our inventions, our everything. We were not allowed to participate. Somebody else used us to participate in the game that was wealth creation and wealth building for both individuals and country, because they intermingle. And 401 years later, we still have nothing. Even when we know what credit does, and we not only have credit, we were the currency. Even when we know what the wealth drivers are, we still had nothing, we were the currency. And we have allowed piss poor leaders, piss poor politicians to say we're not even going to talk about reparations. We have elected a bunch of cowards who don't want to stand for anything. This book, I know people go around talking about how other books are Bibles. In a lot of ways, this book is a Bible on a lot of stuff about wealth creation. Because that's where you go. That's where you get what you need to get to the next step. Okay, this is a book. A lot of books kind of perpetuate and, no, this is a book. Now, they lost me a little bit in the end with all the stuff about what was it they were talking about? We'll get to it on the second part. There was a lot of stuff going on about history and Jackson and who is it? What was his name? Coolidge or Kool-Aid? It was a lot. Anyway, let me go to page 94 for me, fam. Go to the first paragraph on page 94. These slaves cleared fields, bought on spec, grew cotton to make interest payments and keep new loans flowing, and served as collateral. Besides, the dramatic increase in the ability of would-be entrepreneurs to borrow money had extended their right hand reach across time and space, over mountains and across seas. We're going to get to the part 2 where slaves basically had mortgages on them. All that stuff. So when people say, oh, I did it, why can't you did it? No, you did it because you owned us. That's how you did it. That's what you did. If you can mortgage and trade and use slaves as credit, imagine that. That's what happened. Let's go to page. Let me go to one. That's page 94. Let's see. Oh, let's go to the second paragraph really quick on page 94. Enslaved people enslaved people sold as part of an estate were often sold on longer term credit of a year or more, granted from local seller to local buyer, usually with a mortgage to protect the lender. Ridiculous. Let's go to page 97. So you know how they said, I always like to say like, oh, they didn't want to, people weren't trying to get back together. These were mongrels. Go to page 97. Go to the second paragraph. In terms of family. This too is torture. On the one hand, if the scuttlebutt in the warehouse told you a prospective buyer lived near the place where you had heard your wife and child or parent had been sold, well then you would make yourself the brightest eyed and compliant in the bunch. This is slaves trying to reconnect with their family. So if I hear my family's here, I'm going to try to say something to make myself attractive to the buyer. Understand how horrific this is. To say something or have to be put in a position to make yourself attractive to the person who's going to own your body, your flesh, your mind, your hands, your breath in your body, because you want to see your kids again. You want to see your mama again. You want to see your children again. That's torture. And we don't talk enough about the torture of slaves. And we don't talk enough about the trauma that's passed down. We don't talk enough about the grifting that's passed down, because people ain't had enough. So they just want to come and take stuff and steal it and steal ideas. But that ain't, we're going to continue. Now, let's go to the second full paragraph on page 98. Page 98. No, on the block, only the most desperate plays had a chance. At 15, Delisha Patterson gave this speech, literally from the stump, the slave selling stump. Oh, Judge Miller, she said, don't you bid for me, because if you do, I would not live a day on your plantation. I will take a knife and cut my own throat from ear to ear before I would be owned by you. Before I would be owned by you. What is that telling you, fam? That's telling you, a lot of people say, I love the people who say, I'm not going to say the name of somebody who said that, like, well, the problem is we should have never been slaves. Y'all let a lot of people get away with saying stuff like that. We should have fought. Y'all let a lot of old boomers say dumb stuff. If I said something that stupid, you would have a problem. But you will let a boomer or a silent gen person, I'm not going to name no names, say something that stupid and you don't say anything. There was always fighting. It wasn't always rebellion. But there was always pushback against the kind of vicious oppression that our ancestors experienced. Always. And I don't want anybody to tell me that you would have done something different. You weren't there. You don't know what you could have did. You don't know what you would have did. Just sit down and read, and don't elevate these people who say, I could never have been a slave. Yes, you could have, and a good one too. Don't do that. That's disrespectful. Let's go to page let's go to page 102. No, wait a minute. Well, 101 has some good stuff too about wealth building and wealth creation, but we're trying to get through it. Oh, let's get to 102 because this book just says that like we built America. We know that. So let's go, and we're going to get more of that in the second half. Let's go to page 102. Let's go to that second full paragraph towards the middle. That's the long paragraph on the bottom of the page on 102. We're going to be in the middle. So it says, they work to assure buyers that the person on the bench brought so many miles home by coffle chain could call on no sources of external power countervailing against that of purchaser. It is better to buy none in families, but to select only choice first-rate young hands from 16 to 25, buying no children or aged Negroes. Those same old Natchez planters quoted above told John Knight. Listen, it wasn't just a matter of fact. It wasn't just a matter of fact that, well, slaves just got bought away from other people because they needed them. They just needed them. Understand how they've been lying. Well, slaves just got bought away from people because they needed them in Alabama, and so they bought them from over here. No, they did what this is telling you. They decided they didn't want no family members around. They wanted us to lose our families. They wanted slaves to lose their family. They didn't want you to know who your family was. Why would they want you to know that? Then you might run away and try to find them, and understand what love is, and understand what family relationship is. They wanted that. This was intentional. This wasn't just, slaves were traded and there were plantations everywhere, and so people got separated. No, they intentionally separated people. This was torture. This was vicious. This was evil. If you don't want to say it, I will. Yeah, somebody said the whipping machine. Ooh wee. How they whipped them to get more production value. Taking all the hide off the back. Let's go to page 112 really quick. Let's go to the second full paragraph on page 112. The first slavery had not yielded continuous improvements in labor productivity. On the 19th century cotton frontier, however, enslavers extracted production from each enslaved person every year. That's quality control. Let's go to, in the most vicious way possible, let's go to page 113. Go to the first full paragraph on 113. Enslavers were finding ways to turn the left hand against the enslaved. Entrepreneurs redirected left-handed power by measuring work, implementing continuous surveillance of labor, and calibrating time and torture. All of this repeatedly accomplished enslavers' ongoing goal of forcing enslaved people to invent over and over ways to make their own labor more efficient and profitable for their owners. Go to that next paragraph, but go to the middle. Go to the middle of it. The amount of cotton the South grew increased almost every single year from 1800, when enslaved African Americans made 1.4 million pounds of cotton, to 1860, when they harvested almost 2 billion pounds. 80% of all cotton grown in the United States was exported across the Atlantic, almost all of it to Britain. So everybody owes us, not just America. Britain, really the whole global economy. Now listen to this part. Drop down a few lines. Enslaved African Americans were the world's most efficient producers of cotton. Enslaved African Americans were the world's most efficient producers of cotton. Put that in your hat. Keep it right there. When people tell you, well, no, y'all didn't do this. Y'all didn't. You just saying some stuff. Y'all didn't really. Yes, we did. The whip. What do they call it? The Negro. What do they call it? Negro Lord or something like that. But let me just go to page 114. This was interesting because you begin to realize not all plantations are the same either. So go to page 114, that first full paragraph before sunrise. Now go drop down like 5 lines. In Maryland and Virginia, labor crews usually numbered only a dozen or so. These people also look different. Even after a month-long march, it could be seen that my shirt and trousers, this is the slave talking, had once been distinct and separate garments. He said, I had pantaloons and a shirt. Now I had separate clothes now. People could see I had clothes. They was tattered, but I had clothes. But he said, these people also look different. He said, it could be, separate garments. Not one of the others had on even the remains of 2 articles of clothing. Many of the men wore only a long tattered shirt. Many of the women only had skirts. Some teenage boys and girls were completely naked. And the state of the bodies thus exposed worried Ball even the more. Their skin was reddish and ashy. Their hair matted and stringy. Bones stood out. Skin hung slack where muscles had atrophied. You're not being fed, you're being traumatized, you're being harassed, you're being hurt, all of that stuff. Understand, you're supposed to have a full body, a little muscle. You don't have none of that. You malnourished. That's why sometimes when I watch kind of slave films, sometimes I hate to see them where they have a slave that's just like enormously muscular. You don't have the amount of protein to create that kind of muscle and maintain that kind of muscle. You out here looking like some football player. You can't have that kind of protein. These are atrophied, malnourished, broken in a lot of ways. Like you got somebody working in the field. Remember they talk about how they had to pick cotton and he got confused. He was trying to pick the cotton and pull the seeds out and he was messing up. Yeah. Because your hands have to become somebody else so they become dexterous. Now that's what it is. Now let's go to page 120. I think 120. They talk about the whip on page 120. Right? They talk about, and you know one thing I didn't like about the book? Don't call them migrants. Just call them slaves that they may go around somewhere else. Don't call them migrants. I hated that. Because we know what migrants means today. These are not migrants. These are slaves. Just say they marched slave X from Maryland to Louisiana. They marched the slaves. These are not migrants. Stop putting me in line with people who are here today. That's not who we were. We were slaves. Stop trying to nice it up or make us into like a Honduran that just crossed the border. That's not who we are. You just got to be specific about this stuff. So let's go to page 120. They talk about the whip on that first paragraph. In expert hands, it ripped open the air with a sonic boom, tearing gashes through skin and flesh. As the overseer beat Lydia, she screamed and writhed. Her flesh shook. Blood rolled off her back and percolated into the packed dark soil of the yard. Torture. That's all. That's torture. No other way to put it. Let's go to page 128. Let's go to page 128, that first full paragraph. It says, lower and real cotton prices passed on gains in the form of capital reinvested in more efficient factory equipment, higher wages for the new industrial working class, and revenue for factory owners, enslavers, and governments. Cheaper cotton meant cheaper cloth and clothing. Thus, productivity gains in cotton fields also translated into benefits for consumers of cloth. Most of the world eventually acquired clothes made in the industrial West from cotton picked in the U.S. South. Oh, everybody benefited from everything we did except us. Except us. On page 131, you see the psychological torture. Right? Slave labor was more efficient than free labor. Let's talk about it. On page 132, you see an Irish overseer. Wait a minute. An Irish overseer? How? Now, how we the same as the people, and they owned us too, and you were the overseer and we were the slave. We have allowed people to create a sense of sameness amongst everything. People of color, people who immigrated here. Well, I came here from Ireland. That don't mean you me. As a matter of fact, we read here how the Irish became white. But you did become white. We still never did in terms of normalcy. Like, Yvette want to be white. We're talking about what it means to be normal in America, how they have defined it. They have created blackness to anchor us to the bottom. There's really no such thing. That's just melanin and kinky hair. It's not a real thing. Like, people have created that. Understand they created that. No person in Africa, when slaves were being brought and sold from Africa to America, thought about blackness. That wasn't a thing. That was something created here to say, hey, this is the group we're going to tether to the bottom. Here's what it is. Now let's go. When you see page 131, they talk about how they weighed the cotton. 132, the Irish overseer. Let's go to the next one. On page 134, you see this is the overseer. Goins saw an overseer force slow women to kneel in front of their cotton baskets, shoving their heads into the cotton. He would pull up their dress and beat them until blood ran down their legs. No other way to describe that other than torture. They were killing babies. Gross has killed Sook's youngest child, wrote a white woman to her slave trader cousin. White women. Anyway, he took the child out to work. It was between 1 year and 18 months old, and because it would not do its work to please him, he first whipped it and then held his head in the creek branch to make it stop crying. You killed a baby because it wouldn't do work. It's funny to me how when we talk about this and we talk about what happened to us, people don't understand where this trauma comes from. We've already learned, we've talked about epigenetics and stuff like that. You have to understand that trauma is passed down. What do you think these people are going to pass down? If trauma is passed down, what are they passing down? What is more traumatizing than what you just read? And every day you got to go out and pick more cotton than the day before. Let's go to page 141. You see trauma again on page 139 too, about having to pick more cotton. And you was gonna be whipped if you didn't pick it. On page 1, well, let's go to page 140 first. Enslavers beat the enslaved to assuage jealousy. Yes, jealousy. I've always been jealous of a field hand who had to pick 300 pounds a day. Edwin Epps envied the narrow transcendence of his power that Patsy's unconscious grace in the field revealed. Beyond the body he raped, the womb whose children he could sell, the back he flayed, there was part of her that danced and he hated it. Meanwhile, Captain Davis, the father of James Fisher's Alabama owner, carried a whip named the Negro Ruler, making it a point to conquer or kill every one he undertook to flog. He beat one man until brain damage prevented the victim from walking. That's on page 141. Brain damage. They ain't care. Demons. That's some demon-like behavior right there. In the same paragraph on page 141, in that first full paragraph, same paragraph, just drop down a little bit. Every modern method of torture was used at one time or another: sexual humiliation, mutilation, electric shock, solitary confinement, stress positions, even waterboarding. Drop down to the end of that paragraph. As ex-slave Henry Gowans pointed out, Wild assaults cramped down the minds of their targets if they survived, and other witnesses who now acted as much like hands as they could. Let's go to page 143. Well, 142, at the end of the last paragraph in 142, and it goes into 143. Hard forced labor multiplied U.S. cotton production to 100 from, listen to this number. Please listen to this number for me. Cotton production to 130 times its 1800 level by 1860. Slave labor camps were more efficient producers of revenue than free farms in the North. Planter entrepreneurs conquered a subcontinent in a lifetime, created from nothing the most significant staple commodity stream in the world economy. They became the richest class of white people in the United States and perhaps the world, all off of the backs of who? Us. And then they tell us, well, you don't need no reparations. No, but you got our money. You did that. Not only, I don't think people understand. Not only did you enslave us and we didn't get paid, but we didn't, because we were enslaved, we didn't get to access any of the stuff that you used to pass down wealth. It's amazing. It's damning that no political person did this before now. It is absolutely damning. Go to page 148. Let's talk a little bit more about torture and how our people dealt with being diminished and demeaned and erased and abused. Go to the first full paragraph towards the middle. Oh no, the first full paragraph at the beginning. One woman on Joseph Shepard's Mississippi plantation changed her name to Silence. Another sold off said she was no longer Sophia, but Sophia Nobody. Another sold off woman said she was, it's okay. Many found that when they reached back for essential memories, nothing was there. Margaret Nickens' mother and father, brought to Missouri from Kentucky and Virginia as children, forgot their own parents' names. Listen. What they're telling you, family, is the trauma created amnesia. It created amnesia. And I don't know, people talk about Christianity. You see on page 149, they talked about the African gods. That's praying to them didn't work. So I don't know why nobody would pray to Ogun if it didn't work over there. If it didn't work during slave time, people thought, well, Christianity didn't work. Did Ogun work? Because y'all tried that too. That ain't even your stuff. People do the dumbest stuff. I just Ogun. I just what I say I am. I is what I is, and I ain't what I ain't. Let's try to speed this up real quick, family. We're coming to an hour. You saw the man knock the man's eyeball out, the slave's eyeball out. Go to at that first full paragraph. With careful hand and warm ball of tallow, he massaged Brown's displaced eyeball back in place. And you see on page 143 how the North benefited as well. So don't just blame the South for this. No, the North was benefiting wholly, and wasn't nobody standing up for us. They telling you that. Wasn't nobody standing up for us? No. What you mean? Stand up for who? Let's go to page 157. Because they were always trying to expand. So you see in 157... this was all about expanding. We're gonna get them Indians out. They be shooting stuff, arrows or whatever. They be fighting us. We're gonna move these slaves in. And they got it. They kept getting it. The South kept winning. Scurrilous, because the South didn't have enough opposition, apparently. So let's go to page let's go to page 158. Now at this last line, it says, in the new document they created, delegates who wanted to undermine the power of the state's traditional elites eliminated property requirements for white men who wanted to vote, but increased the barriers for black men. No, I thought it was just about men. I thought it was just patriarchy, right? No, No, you were increasing democracy for white men. Black women weren't even on the table. But you were decreasing the likelihood for black men. Oh, sometimes everything you learn is a lie. You go to 162 and they talk about how all of our music was stolen, right? And how and they saw us doing the music and rapping and stuff, and they decided to do blackface. You can't let us have nothing. That's 162 too. Everything just stole. Go to page 182. They just steal everything. I ain't never seen people just steal everything. We're gonna steal the cotton, and we're gonna expand it. We're gonna expand the frontier. We're gonna steal your labor. When you go around dancing and singing and singing spirituals in the field, we're gonna steal that. Ain't nothing you do. If you create something, we're gonna steal that. Ain't nothing we did in this country that they ain't stole. And people want to say that reparations is a handout. Nah, you just stupid. Sometimes you just need to call yourself stupid and rock yourself to sleep. Because you're a big dumb baby. No, everything has been stolen. Go to page 182. Crazy people. Go to the second full paragraph. Slave selling finance the remaking of the Old Dominion's political economy. Francis Rives reinvested profits from his Alabama slave trading journeys in the coal dealing firm that eventually supplied early railroads and factories with fuel. That's wealth. Thus, the market for human flesh funded a new economy that was to be less dependent on plantation-style production, although newly dug canals kept bringing boats from the foothills of the mountains to the slave market in Richmond. Go to the next page, 183. You'll see some more torture. We building the economy and being tortured. It says, this child says, one night I lay down on the straw mattress with my mammy, and the next day I woke up and she was gone. Recalled the former slave, Viney Baker. So you lay down with your mama and go to bed. The next morning she's been sold off. I don't even think we understand how much therapy is needed in our community. I really don't. Go to page 186. If you go to 186, you go down to the last paragraph, you see something is the same now that it always has been. Something is the same. So go to page 186 down towards the bottom. No substantive opposition to the expansion of slavery existed among white Americans. After the Missouri Compromise, active white oppression to slavery dwindled toward the vanishing point. Most of those who conceded that slavery was morally wrong in the abstract, theoretically, right, refused to do anything concrete about it. It was easy to blame Georgia for excesses, as all the while the speculator upgraded the Georgia man. It was easy to propose the transportation of African Americans back to an Africa that they had never seen. That they had never seen. Never seen. That's when people started talking about how we were stole. Right? Had never seen. That is something. On 187, they started speaking about it in the language of we were stole. Right? Go to page 190, you see we start talking about the kidnappers. It says, go to the top of page 190. John Brown watched slave trader Starling Finney and his men abduct a girl from her owners in South Carolina. The thieves kept her in the wagon on the way down to Georgia, partly so they could repeatedly gang rape her. They just steal you. Imagine running and getting your freedom and you get stole. Go to page 193. We're about to wrap this up. We're at 200 and we'll do the next 200 tomorrow. Go to page 193. They talk about the Back to Africa program. So It says genius meant spirit or breath, and Lundy's paper was the first white-run abolitionist newspaper to keep breathing for more than a handful of issues. Initially, Lundy used it to keep support for the program, the American Colonization Society. But skip down. That's a Back to Africa program, right? Skip down to the last paragraph. Most African Americans despised the ACS, believing that the country of their birth was their country. Let me ask you a question, fam. How were people who were enslaved, who were slaves, I don't like enslaved, how were people who were slaves smarter than us? Like they knew, no, I'm here now. This mine now. I don't want to go nowhere. I ain't never been there. I ain't moving. No, Africa, you're not gonna use me up and throw me away. How were they smarter? We still have people now. No, we just gotta go back. How were the ancestors? Slaves, so much smarter than us. They rejected back to Africa. Here we are in 2020 when it was talking about a year of return. How have we retrograded in such a way? Don't make no sense. You see the Denmark Vesey, David Walker, David talking about you have a right to fight back. It don't make no sense that you ain't. Right? So we'll just leave it at there, fam, at about 200. We'll get to that tomorrow. The 200, the second 200 pages. But right now I'm going to go and get the phones going so that we can have a conversation, right, about what you see. Now, if you read the book, have your book page ready. If you didn't read the book, I mean, if you read it on, Kindle or whatever your preferred choice is, that's fine. You can just tell us your interpretation. But give me a couple of seconds. I'm going to set up the phones as usual and call in, and we're going to have the conversation. right, family, we are back. We are going to go straight to the phones. Let me know what you thought about this. What was the part that just kind of tugged at you, that you was like, oh my God? Just like, let me know. Let us know. So we're going to talk about it, fam. I'm going to my first call. I am going to 215. 215, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm calling out Philly.
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on? How you feeling?
Pretty good.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot I wanted to touch on, but I know you got a lot of calls. But I'm just going to point to page 149, and it's like the second paragraph. And I just want to bring this up just to kind of touch on what's going on with all the different chapters and just everything that's going on within the ADOS movements right now. But the quote is, slaves are sometimes great enemies to each other, telling tales, lying, catching fugitives, and the like. All is perpetuated by ignorance, oppression, and degradation. And I think that kind of can relate to just everything that's going on with all the infighting and outfighting now, with all the discrepancies that's going on. But that's all. I'm gonna let you get some more calls.
No, thank you, fam. No, that's a night. You too. That's a great point. We've always had this problem. Thank you, fam. I mean, we've always had this problem of people inside being a problem to progress, and I don't think we've ever really figured out how to deal with the problem. And I don't think we push people away. You know, one of the things I say all the time is that inclusion is just as important as exclusion. And I don't think we understand when we see something, when we see, okay, this isn't right, get rid of them. You have a whole bunch of other people saying, no, they mean well. They ain't really a problem. They're just not thinking right now. And you have to really say, no, they thinking fine. They have another goal other than collective uplift. And you have to, if they don't want to go, you have to push them out. And I think sometimes we tend to push back against pushing somebody out who is going to be an impediment to progress. And I think we have to get better with that. But anyway, let me go to 469. 469, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, hello, how you can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, fam. What's going on? What you think about the book?
Oh, my goodness. This book here, this is my second time reading it. I read it maybe actually, I read it before I had the actual knowledge of who I was as an ADOS person. My name is Jeremiah from Chicago.
Okay.
And I really, I read this my second time. My main point is from chapter 6, really. I think it's rest. I don't know if we got that far yet in regard to what you spoke on, but I really want to kind of speak on how like we are black ADOS. We were money. We were like walking, talking money. In regards of, what it kind of broke down to of, what we cost. So I just kind of looked at some numbers here in regards to what inflation was. I just kind of pulled it in from earlier. A black ADOS slave being sold for $1,500 in 2021's numbers equated to $22,000. A slave sold for $500 broke down to $11,000. This basically means the white slaver, the white folks, if they need to hit a lick, they need to make some money, they can easily sell one of our ancestors, for nothing, and then just, increase that wealth and pass it down. And again, I feel like here, the descendants of those people, they're criminals, and we need to really recognize that here and get our justice here that our ancestors basically died for.
Absolutely. But think about what they said, fam. Everybody remember what they said to this. Remember what they said to the slaves. If the slaves made them mad, they said, I'm going to put you in my pocket. Meaning I'm going to sell you. We've heard that in two books so far. I'm going to put you in my pocket. Your money, your currency. You're not people. That's why I don't like this. That's why I like the word slave, because that's what you did. You made them not people.
Exactly right.
That's what I'm going to put you in my pocket means. That means you're $1 or you're $100 or you $1,500. You are money in my pocket. That's what you are. And that money built.
In my pocket, that's right.
Yeah. You currency. That's all. No more. No. You don't whip nobody like that. That's a person. They didn't whip their dogs like that. For what?
I just want to say one quick thing, and let's go. I know you got a lot of folks here who want to get on here. This book is so powerful. We need to use again. I thought about this. Who was this book written for? Was it for black people or white people? I think the author, he wrote this as like a blueprint for white people to pull from the past on how to continue, like you say, to enslave us from generation to generation. I believe here this book was for white people about how to continue the racist
See,
white
I don't think. See, I don't think that. I don't think that. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. It was a lot of white people who pushed back against this book, white professors and the like, who said that one of the key elements of the book is that they increased torture of slaves to get more cotton and cotton production, right? Because they didn't have the means of the equipment. Like they had to, like, you got to do more as a slave. And so a lot of white professors pushed back against that and tried to say it wasn't true, but you can't really debate, to me, the production, right? And so I don't think it's like that kind of recipe. I think it's a very, for the most part, very honest account of what we went through, of what our ancestors went through, right? I think it's a very honest account of like what slaves endured. Okay, so that's just where I am with it. But I thank you, fam. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
ADOS.
All right, ADOS, fam. Thank you so much for calling in. I am going to my next call. I'm going to 210. 210, what's your name, where you calling from, and what's on your mind?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, fam.
Oh, okay. This is Mike from Harlem, by way of Texas.
Okay.
First time caller, long time listener.
Oh, okay.
Rocking with you for a while, rocking with ADOS for a while. So
good, thank you.
It's exciting to speak to you. Yvette, sis, I'm going to be honest with you. This book was, it was heavy. I remember when you changed the date, you needed to, because it was, I had to take some breaks. I said that in the chat, but I'm going to try to be real quick. What I wanted to focus on was page 137, and it's from Left Hand, and it was talking about, and it's a paragraph, it said, for most of the laborers, however, the left hand was a problem. Symmetry can be beautiful to witness. In tests, people seem consistently attracted to more symmetrical faces and bodies. It basically was talking about how the slaves were so tortured that they had to use their bodies differently. And I think that what this book, the importance of this book, while sobering, I think tying together the physical torture as well as the monetary gain that white people had, you need both to understand where we are today. Because right now we're stuck in between white politics. We got racist white politics on one side that would prefer us be enslaved, and we got pretty much racist white politics on the left that says none of these things matter, we just got to do a little bit. So that's where we're stuck, and reading books like this remind us of why we're in this position we're in now, and why it's so pivotal for us to fight for ADOS for reparations.
I agree with you. And I agree, like, the way you had to, there was a part where I forget the man's name, was it Ball, where he was trying to do it. And I mentioned it slightly earlier. He was like, he was having such a hard time. And there were other parts where it was kind of fun, where you not fun, but it's just like, you realize that we've always kind of had that intellect, right, to be like, I'm gonna put a boulder in here if I didn't get my number right and fool him or whatever. Like, you try to get out of it, and it's just so much there. It's just so heavy. And the thing is, we've never not been able to be heavy. Like, we just have less heavy or torture. But there's never been a time where, like, in America, where we have just been allowed to be free people.
Right. And just last thing I'll say, because I know everybody wants to get in. I always wanted to tell you guys, this movement you and Tone started, it really is the heart of the ADOS community, especially with starting with Dr. Kevin Cosby. You have all the pillars of the black community in one movement. You have the black church, the black intellectual, and the HBCU. So shouts out.
Thank you.
Y'all doing a great thing, man. We will get reparations, man.
Absolutely.
Everybody stay tight, stay locked in, man, and stay on your square, as Yvette says.
Absolutely, fam. I appreciate you. Yeah, if somebody don't get faint and tired, everybody needs some endurance training. But thank you, fam. I appreciate you. I appreciate you calling in. We're going to go to the next caller. We're going to go to 571. 571. What's your name? Where you calling from? And tell me about the book.
Oh, hey, Yvette.
Hey.
This is Cherie from Harlem. How are you?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Pretty good. I was wondering, are we only supposed to comment on the first half of the book, or can we make that comment?
No, if you
halves?
want to comment on another portion, you can. But I haven't discussed it yet. But if you want to comment on that, you can, because you might not get through tomorrow. So.
Okay. So I'm going to start off on page 119. That first paragraph, the last sentence, it says, "But cotton entrepreneurs worked men, women, and older children together for most of the year at jobs that were identical." And then if you go down a couple of sentences, you have the flattening of the job hierarchy made men, women, and even children roughly equal in the sense that they did the same kind of labor. And I mention that because of the fact that slavery flattened gender for ADOS. And then, when we fast forward to modern day, ADOS women are penalized for not being what white supremacy has defined as feminine or subservient enough. And then ADOS men are penalized for not being able to provide or not being masculine enough. And these same gender roles are used to kind of divide us. But these gender roles were created by and are enforced by the same white supremacy and white privilege that caused our gender roles to be flattened.
Yeah, flattening gender and flattening adulthood with childhood. You got to be a kid and work, or he whipped the child and put his face in the water. So like you couldn't even, and you see that today, even when you see children, you see little black children get carted off to jail, like as kids, like in elementary school. So you see that's just mechanized in a different way now. It hasn't gone away, but you're absolutely right.
Right. The second one is from page 359. I'm in the first paragraph, and it's not really necessarily important which sentences, but there are prices in here of, or prospective prices of slaves, 1,300, 1,350, 1,700, 1,600. And when I compare that, the prices of our ancestors back around 1860, and then the present day wealth numbers that Tone always goes over, I'm thinking about the fact that many of us today, with our 2021 dollars, do not have enough to pay for our ancestors back in 1860. Ooh. And how much of a shame that is.
Oh, that's awful. Oh, that's awful. That's awful.
And then I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said that's awful. Oh, you on a roll. You keep going.
Okay, and then my last one, let me try to get to this page. My last one is on page 393. Where's my highlight? Okay, page 393 is kind of the bottom, the last sentence on 393. And it's about Lincoln. And it says, just as he had pointed out to his wavering Republican colleagues, when he refused surrender disguised as compromise. That reminds me of Biden. That surrender disguised as compromise. Lincoln now told the nation and the world that consent to secession meant agreement to the principle that the loser can override the outcome of an election. The secessionists demand, Lincoln argued, rip the fabric of democratic government, replacing it with the principle that a slaveholder's threat is the ultimate right-handed veto. And my comment for that is the ultimate right-handed veto. I think about how our reparations claim is always countered by politicians who talk about this one guy in the middle of the country whose feelings would be hurt if we got reparations. Now, the same guy also wouldn't be okay with immigration reform and abortion reforms and things like that, but somehow this same person is used to bludgeon us on our justice claim. And that would be the ultimate right-handed veto.
It would.
Our justice claim is only used against us.
You are exactly right. You are exactly right. Like nobody says, well, the middle of America wouldn't like abortion, or the people in the South don't like, so we're not going to do it. No, y'all do all that stuff in contravention or whatever of them. But when it comes to us, well, we can't do it. And remember, Obama took it a step further. Well, the immigrants might not like it. First, it was like Confederates and the Middle America might not like it. You took it a whole nother level, and nobody ever thinks about this kind of stuff of who Johnny Ku Klux or whatever might like when they try to pass other stuff. You just figure he don't matter. But with us, it's like, well, we just gotta respect Johnny Ku Klux. You know, he a Ku Klux and he vote too. Ku Klux vote.
Yeah.
So you're exactly right. That's a good point. Only for us.
Yvette, I have one. I have one favor to ask. Can
Sure.
my husband not kill me? Can he come out of the queue and make his point on your call? On this call?
What's your husband's area code? Y'all got the same area code? I don't see him in here. Do y'all have the same area code?
No, he's 808. He goes.
Hold on.
808. You cannot answer 808. Hold on a second. He's going to kill me.
Okay. I was gonna put y'all at the same time.
Hey, Yvette.
Hey.
How you doing? I'm
Pretty
gonna
good.
pitch this real quick. This is Joseph Twitty, or Coach Twitty. I follow you. My wife, you know, we listen to everything you and Tone says. I'm a huge supporter. So let me just make this point to everybody ADOS is concerned. The book, when it talks specifically about us losing our memory and us not having association with our ancestors, that is what's killing us in the United States, where I feel like, you know, at least right now with the pandemic, my wife and I, we've been taking time to learn about our history.
Absolutely.
And the youth and everyone else who are not following you guys, they're being, you know, they're out of tune with their ancestors. They don't have a relationship. Like, we're quick to cut off people, you know, if they kill our family members, or, you know, if they do something wrong to us. And there's a disassociation with our ancestors. And so we need to reconnect. As you're helping us reconnect, and Tone is helping us reconnect, you're getting strong pushback, because that means more than anything. And as our people start to connect again with our ancestors, which is so important, because I see posts where people say, I am not my ancestor. Yes, we are our ancestors.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's so disrespectful.
So we need to connect. I'm sorry.
No, I just say I think that's so disrespectful that I'm not my ancestors crap. When for your ancestors, you wouldn't be here.
Yes, but I think it's just because they're so disconnected from their ancestors. They don't know their history. They don't respect their history. Well, they have to know their history to respect their history. And so for some reason, they want to disconnect from their history and think that they are other when they are not other. They are their ancestors. And you guys are helping a lot of us connect with our ancestors, and they fear that. Not just white America, but also the Black Americans who have decided that they are going to disconnect from their ancestors and not be looked at as slaves or enslaved or ancestors or descendants of slaves, because they look at it as a negative thing rather than something to be proud of.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree. And I think it's a way we have to tell each other our story. This is a story of a freedom struggle and perseverance, right? It's not a story of, oh, I don't want to talk about a slave. It's a story of overcoming. Because the fact that I say this all the time, the fact that we're alive and I'm talking to you and you talking to me, that means that we overcome what was supposed to happen, which is just like, y'all either go to Africa, y'all don't be alive no more if you're not going to be a slave. It's a story of overcoming, and I don't think we really own what the story really is. Because how do you live through the stuff we read in this book? How?
Yes. And you guys are so much of a threat now. I mean, Tone and you, everyone is seeing that as a threat. You are a threat to the foundation of white supremacy. And it's like the Matrix. They didn't want people in the movie and I mean, this is not a movie. Our life is real life. But the more you wake up our people, the more our people can associate with their ancestors, and they're going to get angry. They're going. If they really connect with their ancestors, their mother's mother, their father's mother, their father's mother's mother, their mother's father's mother. If they start going down that list and start seeing what America has done to their ancestors, they will start to see what we see and what you have shown and opened up eyes on. And so, yes, I'm riding with you guys. My wife is riding with you guys. You know,
I see what's going on the other side. They're trying to get people to stay asleep, and it's not going to happen.
Nah, we beyond that, fam. And I want to thank you so much, and thank you and your wife. I appreciate y'all calling in. Yeah, we beyond that. We beyond that. Like, I mean, I think one of the things that we have done with ADOS is we've opened up the Pandora's box, right? There's a box that you have open, and like you can't close it back. Ain't no way to close it back. People can do a lot of stuff, but you can't close that box back, and that's kind of where we are. So, I thank you, fam. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the tag team.
Keep up the great work. Keep up the great fight.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you, fam. I appreciate everybody who read this long book. I think it was worth it, but I appreciate everybody who did it. Thank you. I appreciate you, tag team. I appreciate y'all. I'm going to the next call. I'm going to 510. 510, what's your name? Where you calling from? Tell me what impacted you about the book.
Hello?
Hey, 510.
Hey, Jeanette, how's it going? I'm so happy to have gotten through. First time caller. Just want to commend you and Tone. You're doing yeoman's work. And, you know, I haven't, I've got through about half of the book. I just want to touch upon a few
You got to read the other half by tomorrow.
That has to do. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I said you got to read the other half by tomorrow. I'm just playing with you. Go on.
Well, I started late, but I've been reading in a hurry. But on page 117, where it talks about, near the bottom, it talks about the innovation and violence, in fact, was the foundation widely shared pushing system. You know, white people perfected violence and their, you know, the wealth that they created. I mean, they were so greedy that, you know, they perfected violence. And page 121, there's a passage that the guy said that in the context of the pushing system, the whip was as important to making cotton grow as sunshine and rain. Think about that. The whip was as important as sunshine and rain. And then it says that they perfected violence. And this, you know, they were motivated by money. Everything is clear that wealth and greed is the sole motivation for what was done to us. And that's the same motivation that keeps us in this perpetual state of bondage, greed and wealth. We have always been a commodity to them, and they never want to see us as anything else.
Yeah.
And and everything that they have created and create based on our plunder and our downlift is based on that. And I just want to say one of the things that, you know, we talk a lot about why they refuse to give us policy or do anything substantive for us, and we're the ones who continuously put them in power. I remember back about, 40 years ago, I heard a white politician say, he said that the reason why we get in trouble with black people is because we promise them stuff that we don't do.
Yeah.
And he said that, and from that point on, I noticed that it seemed like there was a shift to where they quit making promises to improve black people's condition. It almost seemed like that became the new protocol, to not make any promises to do anything for us.
No specifics.
And that seems... Go ahead.
No, I said no specifics. You're right.
Yeah, no specifics. So what we must understand, family, is that's the protocol now. The protocol is not to give us anything, not to promise us anything. We all heard the saying, our mothers taught it to us, every black person knows it, where they said, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free?
Absolutely.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
We all are familiar with that. So why would they give us policy if we're going to vote for them anyway? You see, well, we must understand that is the protocol. In order for us we have to break that protocol. Because who wants to be the first one amongst them to give us something when they feel like they're gonna get our vote anyway?
Absolutely, absolutely, fam. Thank you so much.
I'm going a little bit off topic, but I just wanted to throw that out there because we keep seeing it. It seems to me that a lot of people are confused as to why they don't want to help the people who continuously help them, and it's because it is a protocol. And until you break that protocol, we're going to have to maybe suffer a few election cycles.
Absolutely, that's what we talk about. Yep.
And if we're unwilling to do that, then I don't know what to say, but we got to be willing to do that.
Absolutely, fam. Thank you for calling. I appreciate your call, and that's what we talk about on this show. You have to break that. Like people react to consequences. Politicians react to pressure, not applause. That's what we talk about here. So he's exactly right. I'm going to my next caller. I am going to 914. 914. What's your name? Where you calling from? And tell me what your most profound thought or observation from the book was.
Hello, Yvette. Can you hear me clear?
I can hear you fine, fam. What's going on?
Awesome. My name is Tyler. I'm calling from New York. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Thank you so much for all the work that you do.
Thank you.
I want to touch on just a couple points real quick that I thought, this book is just filled with amazing stories. One I want to talk about was on page 47, and it talked touching on that piece about Haiti. And it was really interesting. It's like towards the end of the last full paragraph on that page.
Okay.
In addition to also, it mentions a piece before this where it talks about how Haiti's independence kind of opened the door for slavery, at least in terms of its value, to increase once again. So it was like another place's freedom and independence that they fought for and we respect, at the same time kind of opened the door for a different type of economy that would boom here in America.
Yeah.
And it specifically says independent Haiti's first, and this one piece, I got a couple pieces I want to get to, try to get through it quick. But independent Haiti's first constitution created a radical new concept of citizenship.
Yeah.
Only black people could be citizens in Haiti, and who was black? All who would say they rejected both France and slavery and would accept the fact that black folks ruled Haiti. Thus, even a white person could become a black citizen of Haiti as long as he or she rejected the assumption that whites should rule and Africans serve. And I thought that was so interesting because once again, the difference in terms of how we see blackness and how complex and how even it's way beyond skin color. Even back then, into the early 1800s, blackness was viewed as something way beyond just skin color. That's something that stuck out to me.
Yep.
A couple other points I want to get to is more just related to how, because this book really speaks to how slavery built whiteness. So
now say that one. You got to slow that down. Slavery built whiteness. You gotta say that. You can't run past that. Slavery built whiteness. Ooh wee. Now you go. I'm sorry.
No. I appreciate it because that to me is one of the major takeaways in this whole book. If you look to page, let's say 80, 84, and I love the whole the stories in here were crazy. The whole conversation about Maspero's Coffee House and how that was such cultural center and just a center for booming business was just it was astonishing. And about half in the last full paragraph in 84, it talks about towards the end of that paragraph, it says those were people who specialized in buying enslaved people in one place, taking them to another, and selling them there. As of 1819, professional slave traders were rare in New Orleans. No specialists kept a private jail like the 2 dozen that would cluster by the 1850s along the Graveyard and Baronne streets. And that part stuck out, because some people say, well, I wasn't a slave owner. Well, like, the wealth wasn't always just in you owning a plantation and you having slaves. Like, some people were literally buying them and reselling them real quick just to get more money. Like, it was the biggest come up during that century. So even if you didn't own them for a long period of time, even if it wasn't you literally, all right, they're building or manufacturing cotton for me, there was a whole nother level to just how it built everything. A couple more pieces I want to touch on really quick. On page 88, also talking about like jails and whatnot. Like after about the beginning of the first full paragraph, after reaching New Orleans, slaves like Rachel and Tall William were often kept on board their vessels until they could be sold. In other cases, entrepreneurs locked captives up in stables in the city jail or with other commodities in counting houses and warehouses. William Kenner kept people at his own slave labor camp until he considered them seasoned enough to sell. Slave sellers also locked people at Maspero's, that coffee house, the first Starbucks, and in the ballroom, like before, selling them and all that. And that was really interesting because sometimes when we talk about even just prison, like we talk about it like it kind of boomed solely after the the loophole in the 13th Amendment and things like that. When actually, like in the development of this nation, like that was always a way to manage and distribute and control us. Always from the very beginning. And even once again, it was even at the coffee house. Like jail was at the coffee house. One more piece I want to touch on real quick. I know you got followers in the queue. Also on 89, towards the bottom of 88 and moving into 89. The acts of New Orleans entrepreneurs also changed their own lives, and not simply by enriching their account balances. For men like the entrepreneurs and Maspero's, the birth of the modern world opened access to powers that few who were not absolute monarchs had ever before. And that speaks so deeply to that concept that you talked about when talking about when affirmative action was white, in terms of what it took to achieve whiteness, and what that truly created, and how the building of our wealth is integral to, or the building of that wealth was integral to our suffering and pain. I know you got a bunch of people and I really appreciate.
Well, thank you, fam. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Those were wonderful observations. And so thank you, fam. I appreciate you. But not only the building of whiteness, right? Like to build whiteness for somebody else. Like you don't even, we think about it as whiteness and it's like a color. No, it's far more complex than that. Like he said. But you build something, this thing that's going to create monarchs and barons of industry. But not for you. Not for your kids. No. You get nothing. You get less than nothing. As a matter of fact, you get negative. So you build this whiteness and you never have any access to it. So anyway, fam, I'm going to my next caller. I am going to 317. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind? Talk to about the book. 317, you there?
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
It's Don from Indianapolis.
Hey.
I'm doing okay. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good.
So, I'm going to try to talk faster than I have in the past. I wanted to answer your question about how it is that our ancestors knew more than we do now about the idea of going back to Africa. And I think the issue is that we have people protecting their perceived assets, right? Because when you look at the people who jump on that movement, they tend to be people who have had uplift because they're an entertainer or an athlete of some sort that have reached some kind of pinnacle with their wealth, but have that discovery that that's not enough to gain the privilege of whiteness. Because when you don't have the money seems like once you get it, then you'll be there. But then they get there, and then it's not enough, and that's when they start looking back at, well, maybe if I go back to Africa, that's going to fill that hole that I don't have.
Yeah.
And then the other people that support it are the people who don't have the assets.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, I think it's an issue of protecting perceived assets, and that's also the problem that you have within the movement itself, that you have people who feel that pushing for reparations or political equity will somehow endanger the position and comforts that they currently have. And, you know, that's where you get your house slaves who protect Massa over and tell him about the runaway project, right?
Absolutely.
Instead of just letting them get away.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I wanted to say, Yvette, are you old enough to remember when Roots was on TV the first time?
I am.
Do you remember what it was like that week that Roots played?
Well, you know,
in what it was like in the world.
Well, I think it was a frenzy, but I'm
and
trying
the reason there was,
like, I don't think
it was, you know, black people became, in quotes, blacker, and white people were like, oh, I didn't know, and all that. And the reason I bring that up is because you were talking about.
Okay, see, hold on. I'm not.
Like
hold on. I'm not. You know what?
Now that it's open.
You know what? Hold on a second. I think I remember. I don't think I remember it. I think I heard about it because it said 77. And I couldn't have remembered it. I was 2. So I think I, you know, because I remember it being. It must have been replayed though or something because I don't think I remember it. But I remember like even with the replay and stuff. I remember like the frenzy. Like there was everything that's associated with Roots with me is like, oh my God, we're finally getting our history and oh my God, and African, and we're finally getting back to the. It was I remember some of that, but I don't remember. I don't know if I was around for the beginning of it, like when it because it says 77 here. I'm not sure, but go on. I'll let you finish talking.
So when Roots originally aired, white people were scared of black people. It was kind of like the day that OJ won, except for a lot bigger. And white people were more sensitive to the issue, and black people who didn't know anything about it were like, "Oh my God, that's what slavery was." But it was a very crystallized moment in the social fabric. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because you said that, you know, Pandora's box has been opened, and so now it can't be closed. But I would argue that it can, and that's something that we have to be very careful about, because when Roots aired, it looked like things were going to change, because all of a sudden this information was in the public sphere.
But wasn't it? Let me ask you a quick question. Let me ask you a quick question, and then we'll go. I'm gonna have to go to the next caller and get to them. But wasn't it because Roots had a lot of misinformation? Like, because even the kidnapping part and all that stuff, like wasn't the because I'm always suspicious of like stuff that's really played for us, you know, in the mainstream media. And I'm not saying that all of it's bad, because some of it's good and some of it's, you know, some of it's empowering. I'm not saying that. But like it kind of made white people bad, black people good, when there was even no black people when we were kidnapped and we were sold. So I kind of believe that like Roots did kind of make, I'm sure you're right, made white people afraid or whatever, but there was another poison pill in there that made us not understand that there were some things that we were not being told and we were being manipulated. So you were going to do that in a very kind of intentional way, to kind of present a narrative that wasn't true in a way that will also harm us for what we didn't understand. So I feel like a few things were going on with Roots, right? That's kind of how I feel.
Those things were separate, though. Those things were separate, because I know what you're talking about. But the thing is that when Roots aired on television, that none of that was an issue. because at the time, it was several years after Roots originally aired that they discovered that he plagiarized.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the plagiarism.
So,
I'm talking about the whole African versus white.
I'm sorry?
No, I'm not talking about the plagiarism. But I'm going to have to let you go, Carla, just so I can get some few more people in here. But I'm not talking about the plagiarism part. I'm talking about, like, what was left out in terms of, like, you know, it made us confuse blackness and flatten blackness in a way that really we're bearing the brunt of today. Right? And so, yes, they were afraid, but then we flattened blackness in a way that made us not understand ADOSness, and that was a problem. But I got to let you go, Carla, only because I got to get some more people in because they read the book, and I want them to be able to get in and say some stuff because we have 2 days of it, and the queue is full. But I want to thank you. I appreciate it. It was a nice discussion.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a good discussion to have. Just not right now. I just don't want to have the Roots discussion right now. But I understand what she was saying. Let me go to the next caller. I am going to 817. What's your name? Where you calling from? And tell me about the book.
Hey, how you doing, Sister Yvette?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Avery. Yeah, this is Avery calling out of Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. My bad. I'm just waiting. It's a little delay, so I'm just, waiting for your response. Okay, so real quick, early on in the book, it's just right off the bat, chapter 1, feet. Let's see, it's going to be page 2. It says I'm gonna go to 2 different places. It's going to be the second paragraph where it says, there are 1,760 yards in a mile, more than 2,000 steps, 40,000 a long day's journey. And I'll just, you guys read the rest. But it was just like, that struck me because how many miles and days that these journeys took for our ancestors to get from one spot to the next. Mm-hmm. And the next thing that I want to bring up was on page 13.
Okay.
And that's feet as well. And it's the second paragraph. It says, Francis Frederick remembered such a morning. And it's talking about basically how the wives would go to these plantations to bring their husbands, fresh set of clothes, but they didn't know that their husband would be sold, So I got to say this real quick. Okay. I know we got other callers, but in my understanding of ADOS, I actually had a T-shirt made, and on this T-shirt, it's 38 names of ancestors that I researched who were enslaved, and the top 2 was my great grandfather, five times, so great, and his wife, and I actually found their transfer estate with their names on it, what he was valued at in 1840, which was $600, and what she was valued at 1840, which is $450. And I just think about their story, how this institution, this evil, brutal institution, could have separated them, but they were together long enough to have my great-great-grandparent and so on and so forth to bring me into this world. So it's very deep, and it's a lot, man. This book was really heavy, and it was a good read.
It was.
And I'm recommending it to a lot of my family and a lot of my friends. So that's all I have for everybody.
Thanks, man. I appreciate
of course, I appreciate you. Appreciate Tone.
Absolutely.
Let's keep doing what we're doing.
Absolutely, fam. Thank you so much. I thank you so much for calling in. And those of you who don't get in tonight, the phones will be much more thinner tomorrow when we do the second half of the book, because everybody ain't calling in tomorrow, because everybody ain't gonna get it tonight. I can tell you that. Woo-wee. I've been saying that a lot, like I'm a cowboy. Woo-wee. Cowgirl. Woo-wee. Oh, what's wrong? I was doing some silliness. Anyway, let me go to my next caller. I am going to 314. What's your name? Where you calling from? Tell me about the book.
My name is Will.
Hey, Will.
From St. Louis. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Will. How you doing?
Yeah, I really like. Okay, I like the way you set it up on page 12 with Breckinridge, who was a Virginia slave owner who was trying to expand in Kentucky, and how you said he told a female relative, "Your land and Negroes, let no person on this earth persuade you to give up." I think that set the whole tone for the book. Now, I only read the first chapter because it's a hard emotional read. This book really is, because it makes me think about my grandparents who were sharecroppers. But the whole point is on page 29, where it talks about Jefferson, because it shows all the contradictions about our nation and the whole term diffusion. And at the top of page 29, where it says, during the 1800 election, a few Northern Federalists charged Jefferson with keeping a harem of enslaved lovers at Monticello. But Southern Federalists and most Northern ones kept the slavery question stealth. They did so because of interest. And to me, that set the stage for this whole book. And slavery's expansion was one topic in which political leaders from all sides could find common interest. So the North was complicit, the South was complicit, everybody was complicit. And if you go down that same page because they kept talking about the expansion, it says many congressmen examined their direct financial interests and chose to ensure that Mississippi became a slave territory. So it's almost like everybody was double talking. They didn't want to act like they was in favor of slavery. The left hand said we ain't in favor of slavery, but the right hand said we are because of money and because of interest. And I like the honesty of George Washington's nephew, Bushrod Washington. At the bottom of page 34 and top of page 35, when he talks about his decision to sell off enslaved people, he insisted not a tale of greed, but a demonstration of how forced migration protected white lives. And I know you hate the term migration, but I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's like what you've been saying for years, that our ancestors, being slaves, and even after slavery, our disadvantage built their advantage. It built their wealth.
And it's still here today.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, I said it's still here today. That wealth is still here. People think it went somewhere. And the poverty is still here. It's all still here. It's in the economy. It's in our lives.
Yep. Yeah, but that's all I had to share, because it just brings in my head that whole interest, common interest, and how it built the whole system.
Absolutely.
Everybody had to be complicit. There's no way.
And everybody was. And there's
territory.
And when we get to the second part, we're going to talk about, a little bit about how they were specifically complicit. Oh, well, that's bad. And that still happens today. Oh, that's them bad Southerners. We ain't got nothing to do with that. They ought not be like that. Oh, you hush. You lie. So anyway, fam, thank you so much for calling. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, fam. We're going to go to probably our last caller for tonight. But do not forget that tomorrow at 9:30-ish, we will be doing the second half of the book. If you do not get through today, please, we will probably have far less people, because people don't like to be around talking on Friday about books and stuff necessarily. So we usually, if I do 2 days in a row, I usually have far fewer callers the second day than the first day. So if you don't get through today, I try to get through tomorrow so that you can be a part of the conversation. I am going now to, who is our last caller going to be? I'm going to 918. 918, what is your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hello, Yvette. This is KK calling from Houston by the way of Tulsa. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I just wanted to make 3 really quick points.
Okay.
The first point is in chapter 4, left hand. So there they talked a lot about something called the Malthusian trap. And so I defined it, and so that's essentially when population outpaces agriculture. And so prior to that, anytime the population grows too big, they'll most likely go through a famine. But because of slavery, it arose that we just circumvented that somehow. And so a lot of the time we think of innovation as hold on, let me find my place, like planes and trains, electricity, but white men have just found a way to make bank loans and stock rotation. Like, that was the innovative thing. Yeah. And it kind of just had me, wow, they were really up to something. So that's my point. And then my second is only 1,000 slaves made it to freedom.
I saw that number. I meant to bring that up. That's you're right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It was crazy. So only 0.1% made it to freedom. And I don't know about you, but since I've been about 5 years old, every movie and book is about escaping to freedom, but that's not the narrative that actually exists. So I think the next movie made should be about being born a slave and dying a slave. We don't need that escape to freedom because 99.9% of people didn't achieve that. It's almost a false narrative. I think the next movie needs to be about Charles Ball, because Charles Ball, I believe, is the average slave.
Yeah, and I think, but well, you know, people don't want to see the depressive. People want to see a hero's journey. And the thing is, you know, we have to stop what we want to. Like, we just don't want to see that. We think that, oh, it's negative. I don't want to see that. And it's like, no, it's really not. It's not negative because we're still here. So you see what they had to endure to still be here. But I was blown away by that number too. And you saw the ones who tried to get away and got caught back and all that stuff and abused because they got caught and stuff like that. Like, it was like hardly, and I hate the people. I would have ran off. You got bad feet today. In 2021, what would you gonna do?
Nobody would. 600 miles. Even Charles Ball's wife didn't even recognize him when he became back. She didn't even know who he was.
She said, "Who that was using my husband's name? I'm trying to say, whatever she said. My husband's voice. Who you?"
The last point I would like to make is a really simple one, but mass paroles is still open. Go to their website. They have delicious food. They serve judges and lawyers. So I don't know what we can do about that, but that's definitely like a big issue. Oh, Yvette, I can't hear. You can say that again?
No, I didn't say that. No, I just said, I didn't say nothing.
Oh, yes, the food looks delicious. But yeah, they are a thriving business still. That's just something I know.
Okay. Well, thank you, fam. I appreciate you.
You were very...
Thank you. Appreciate it, fam. Like I said, tomorrow we are going to talk about the second half of the book at around 9:30-ish. So around that time, please check to make sure you get notifications. Hit that bell to make sure you get notifications. If you have not checked already, please take care of that. Hit that like button before you leave, but we will be back tomorrow. Friday, it'll be easier for people to get through because, like I said, we don't get much turnout. It'll probably be 200 people here tomorrow. So then we can, if you didn't get a chance to be a part of the discussion today, I would absolutely appreciate it because this was a really, 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 really profound book, and I'm happy we finally got to it, fam. So I will see y'all tomorrow. Be easy breezy. If you started a libation, make sure you finish it. And we will be back here tomorrow having the conversation. Make sure you hit the like button, do all that good stuff, and go to bed, get you some rest, and wear your mask. Right? You ain't got the vaccine. Some people say the vaccines is lost somewhere. We don't know where they at. Wear your mask. Don't play no games. All right, fam? Take care of yourself. Don't bother nobody. Don't let nobody bother you. I'll see you tomorrow at 9:30-ish.